Painting and architecture. Inspired by his two passions, the king built this castle, the largest in the Loire and the most beautiful in France. King François I dreamt up this magnificent freestone and slate construction, Chambord Castle. The castle stands on 5,440 acres of land and is surrounded by walls. It's a natural park where we can observe and protect a wide variety of species. With its variety of trees and its many different types of mammals, amphibians and birds, Chambord is a microcosm of the French forest. In 1519, François I decided to make this vast Sologne property his hunting ground due to its abundance of game, deer, wild boars and waterfowl. 500 years later, nothing has changed. However, it's now the animals that rule the Chambord kingdom. We spent a year observing wildlife throughout the seasons in Chambord. This idyllic setting embodies natural diversity in France. A deer, a bird, a salamander or a boar can exist here at Chambord as contentedly as at the heart of a wild forest. People work carefully in order to maintain this unique natural habitat. Foxes, for example, have nothing to fear, except perhaps getting struck by the hoof of a rutting deer. We begin our Chambord adventure in autumn when deer mating season is in full flow. During rutting period, the doe, who usually lives serenely with their fawns, find themselves caught between battling males. The rut takes place in different areas and is always led by a dominant male. He is the master of his territory and dominates his land. Young males in their prime set out to overthrow him and take ownership of his herd. Here, we find two willing contenders. They are daring to take on the dominant male and to battle him for his herd. The male must be on guard, and it is imperative that he protects his doe that are in heat, as this only occurs for 36 hours a year. The first challenger is immediately countered by the larger stag. Two animals that weigh 150 to 200 kilos throw themselves against each other in a ritual combat. This type of battle is rare, as they usually rely on deterrent postures and gestures that block confrontation. It's the height of rutting season. Most of the doe are in heat and the males are on peak form. They have erogenous zones on the tip of their antlers and they rub them on the ground. The victorious stag marks out his terrain in order to prevent his opponents from approaching. The doe try to escape the situation. One of the two stags decides to approach his opponent. The dominant male has spotted him. A game of hide-and-seek ensues between the doe and their master, who is determined to bring them back to the rutting area. He eventually succeeds. His herd is reunited and the enemy has been ousted. The fawns get caught up in the excitement of the action. At 4 or 5 months old, it's all a game for them. As soon as the rut is finished, they rejoin their mothers and head back into the twisting labyrinth of the forest. Francois I indulged his passion for hunting on his land where animals run as freely as those in the forest. A royal residence was therefore built for the king. (10,000 square meters, 440 rooms, 365 windows and 83 staircases. Francois I conceived his Château de Chambord in a bid to make an impression on other European sovereigns. He only stayed there 9 to 10 times in his 32-year reign that was blighted by war and political unrest. Today, 90 of the rooms are open to the public. His emblem, the salamander, is found on the ceilings and the doors. There is a double helix staircase in the center of the castle that was inspired by a Leonardo da Vinci drawing. The palace grounds are the same size as the city of Paris, and the 32-kilometer wall that surrounds the land is the same distance as the highway that encircles Paris. It is supervised by Pascal Thévard, the director of Chambord Heritage Buildings. Sections of the wall often collapse and they must be repaired in order to keep poachers out. The wall that was envisaged by Francois I now houses a unique biodiversity, the real castle jewels. Guillaume Brunetot, Director of Natural Heritage, and several foresters supervise the protection of the animals and the forest. 80% of the 5,440-acre estate is inaccessible to the public. The forest wildlife enjoys tranquility and ideal living conditions. A veritable Noah's Ark, the land is inhabited by many rare species, such as the wildcat. The Chambord estate is also used for animal restocking projects. Mountain sheep were on the brink of extinction until they were introduced here in the 1950s, and they now populate mountain ranges in the south of France. As the cranes take flight over Sologne, we know that autumn is in full flow. The foresters ensure that each of the areas are protected throughout winter. The ponds must be taken care of. The Chambord ponds are emptied every 2 or 3 years. They are cleaned and surplus fish are removed. Unwanted fish species, such as the catfish, are removed.
On peut les mettre là-dedans les...
Ouais, on en met quelques-uns.
Il est beau, il est pas... soit bleu là. Tu le mettrais là, hein.
Once they have been sorted, the fish are sold. Catfish is given to birds and wild boars. There are 10 ponds in the Chambord forest that date back to the Middle Ages. The earth was made up of sand and clay, and the monks at the time decided to dig out carp breeding ponds. The park's wildlife wouldn't be as extensive if it weren't for these water pools. Grey herons tirelessly roam the muddy expanses with the same grace as the great white egrets. As the last leaves cling to the branches, trees that need to be felled are marked out by the Chambord supervision team, who carefully verify the selection.
Par 6, 58, 45 par 8, 45 par 8.
The marteleurs are equipped with state-of-the-art hammers, calipers and spray paint, and a pointer will note the diameter, species and the height of the selected trees.
35, 6, 35 par 6. 50 par 8. 50 par 8.
Most of the Chambord foresters have been there for many years and are very attached to the grounds. They have learned how to preserve the forest resources whilst maintaining different areas of a variety of animals, for example, by coppicing the trees where the deer roam. "15,000 cubic meters of wood are cut down each year by loggers who purchase the trees. Wood is also kept to use for heating the rooms that are open to the public. A salamander that was dozing under a log escaped just in time. François I chose his emblem wisely. It's said that the salamander can withstand fire. It symbolizes power over fire and therefore over men and the world. The salamander has a role in the Chambord ecosystem, but as autumn closes in, it searches a stone or a tree stump to hibernate underneath. Blue tits, robins and other songbirds can only dream of hibernation. Nature dictates that they must endure winter cold and hunger. During the winter season, boars are warmed up by an inner fire, the rot. Omnivores are well protected from freezing temperatures. Even when covered by a layer of snow, the ground protects earthworms and slugs. The castle stands guard in the park like a majestic ghost wearing a shroud. Were it not for costly restoration projects, the castle would have been ruined by the 500 winters that it has lived through. Stones, slates and chimney turrets have been repaired many times. As well as François I, other monarchs such as Henry II and Louis XIV stayed for brief periods in the castle for hunts or parties, but for most of the time, the castle has stood empty. The real kings of Chambord are those whose lineage has never been wiped out, the animals that continue to exist here. Feeding in winter, and especially in the snow, is not easy for deer. They survive on tree bark, bramble leaves and acorns. Winter brings about a post-rutting season calm for the doe. They live apart from the stags with their fawns. Apart from the occasional bullfight, the Chambord animals live a stress-free existence, as they have no predators. Castle life is serene and tranquil, and nature is preserved. Almost 200 different species of birds exist in Chambord, but in the winter, they are obliged to share the limited areas where they find water, since the ponds were emptied 2 months ago. This kingfisher does not want his domain to be invaded. He is well suited to his small canal. The calm, shallow and clean waters mean that he can easily identify fish. A wading sandpiper will muddy his waters. Winter certainly brings about change. A fish-eating robin. Now we've seen everything. The grey heron, who up until this point was the king of the Chambord ponds, is now reduced to fishing in a thimble. The heron spends most of the year in solitude until mating season, where he finds a partner, and they build a nest together in a tree alongside dozens of other pairs of herons. He feasts on large fish that have been abandoned by man, whilst the kingfisher has a preference for small fish such as minnows, sculpins or stickleback. He swallows his prey headfirst in the direction of its scales. The heron isn't a competitor in terms of fishing, but the kingfisher would prefer him to leave his area. However, the wader must stay, as this is the only place for miles around where there are still a few fish.
La ligne de Jacques Lefebvre. Fabrice Guillon. Richard Allais. Patrick Renaud. Complet.
The foresters have been mobilized for the Chambord trapping operation. They are aiming to capture around 20 live deer. A team is putting hangings in place that will prevent the animals from escaping. The second team are putting nets in place, the traps. The term falling into the trap is derived from this. It resembles a hunt. Beaters shout themselves hoarse as they send the prey towards the captors. It's quite the opposite. The deer are being captured to repopulate the French and European forests. Trapping has taken place 2 to 3 times a year since 1947, when Chambord became a national reserve for wild fauna. 4,500 deer have been caught and released elsewhere.
Ouais, de Golfe 12, il nous faut une caisse, Carrefour, des lignes 1 et 2. Prends l'autre côté plutôt.
60% of the French deer population have Chambord in blood. This system also serves as a way of managing the park deer population. Other than these highly regulated trapping operations, Chambord is left entirely to nature. It is an ecosystem that works like any other. It produces, removes, and transforms animals and plants in an unchanging cycle. Any corpses must be eliminated. Buzzards and crows take on the role of scavenging. As the winter perseveres, robins take advantage of any little extras. They peck on the fat from the rotting corpses to help them endure the winter cold. What happened to this boar? It's possible that he died of natural causes or in a fight. This is more common than it's thought. Rutting season is punctuated by fighting. Adult males live in solitude, apart from when they make their bid to conquer females. Several females, in fact, since they live together. If they're covered the same company, then 2 males are obliged to fight. It starts as play, but can degenerate into a brutal confrontation. For deer, winter is the season of past loves. Males start to group together and prepare for the next rutting season. They do this by shedding their antlers. Yes, each year, this magnificent attribute of virility falls to the ground. Antlers are formed in a branch-like structure that grows outwards from the skull. The adult deer has between 8 and 18 horns, sometimes more. The number has nothing to do with age. Each antler is unique and measures around 70 centimeters and weighs 2 to 5 kilos. It's late February and the oldest of the deer are beginning to shed their antlers, not necessarily at the same time. This metamorphosis destabilizes the deer, physically, and because their role in the hierarchy shifts. As the weeks pass, it becomes impossible to tell the difference between the young and the old, the dominant and the dominated. The deer become anonymous. New antlers start to grow from 2 pedicles that protrude from the skull. Regrowth takes about 4 months. The new antlers have usually grown by July. They are then ready for rutting season. In Sologne, people say that a good winter precedes a good spring. It looks like a good spring is on its way. The heavy snow and frequent rain have brought the Chambord ponds back to life. After a long winter spent in the woods, the deer are on the move again. They are searching for a new place to graze. The Cosson River, which passes through the park, doesn't prevent the animals from moving to fresh pastures. Underneath the oak tree, we find a carpet of acorns that were buried by the snow. Spring brings many surprises. Whatever the season, the boars find food, acorns, insects, fish. They'll eat anything and everything. The cuckoo acts as if he is the phoenix of the forest. However, the osprey is the symbol of Chambord. This magnificent raptor is sacred in these grounds. France counts about 30 pairs of ospreys. 7 are at Chambord. They are the most protected species in the park. At one point, they had disappeared from France and only existed in Corsica. They came back to central France in 1985. Having migrated to Africa for the winter, this pair of ospreys have returned to nest here. They have found the nest that they had the year before, but this isn't enough to keep them together. The male osprey woos his partner by bringing her fish from the nearby Loire River. Food offerings from the male to the female are made in preparation for mating. Mating starts the beginning of a coupling that will last for several months. In April, the female lays 2 or 3 eggs that are then incubated for 40 days. For the next 2 months, they will bring fish to the nest to feed their young. There are many species of animals at Chambord. 2 types of these animals are regulated, the deer and the wild boar. The park cannot accommodate any more than 600 boars. Hunts take place in order to control and preserve the park's ecosystem. The deer population is controlled by trapping and occasional shootings. A family of badgers make their way out of the burrow as the day comes to an end. More often than not, they wait for nightfall. The tawny owl observes the action. Badgers live in large families. The mother lives with the young in a burrow system that has around 6 or 7 entries. The father lives nearby. The young badgers make the most of these excursions out of their underground burrows. They run around and play games. Nighttime is dedicated to finding food. The bulk of their diet is made up of earthworms, but they also feed on small frogs, mushrooms, and carrion. Most of the Chambord animals dwell in the natural parkland, but some prefer the forest of castle turrets and chimneys. The numerous windowsills come in all shapes and sizes, and many of them are suitable for nest building. A pair of kestrels have made this high-up spot their luxury residence. The surrounding meadows are filled with rodents. Kestrels nest in high places where they can't be disturbed. They have found a hidden ledge in this maze of stone, and the female will soon lay 4 to 5 eggs. There are only 5 or 6 pairs of kestrels at Chambord. Why so few? Because it is a forest park and they need an open habitat with acres of grassland in order to feed their young. When hunting, the kestrel hovers above its territory. It remains stationary despite the wind and surveys the hunting ground below. It's been 3 months since the pair of Chambord ospreys mated. They have had 2 chicks. Their offspring won't remain anonymous for long. The male is getting anxious because every year, in late spring, an intruder climbs into his lair. He tries everything he can to get rid of the invader. He even throws a freshly caught fish at him. Ospreys are extremely rare in France, and a protection project has been put in place in the Loire and Cher region in order to monitor the species. At just 2 months old, they already have a good peck. In another 10 days, they will be ready to learn to fish and fly.
0. Procéder à la pesée.
1540.
1540. 540.
They are the only birds that are weighed and ringed. 2 other Chambord symbols, the short-toe eagle and the booted eagle, do not undergo this ritual. Disconcerting. The young ospreys are returned to their parents. It is now possible to know whether or not they return to nest in the park. Oak forests, glades, meadows, thickets, water. The Chambord ecosystem is representative of French nature. This park, that is as large as Paris, reminds us that nature has no boundaries. Rare birds such as the black stork choose to dwell here. There are about 30 pairs in the whole of France. The laws of nature must be obeyed. This motto is the foundation of the Chambord Heritage Policy. Each year, a landscape project is put in place. For example, they might decide to dedicate a certain area for nesting birds or create a new pond to attract a declining species. Whilst boars require constant hydration, their pond trips are also dedicated to mud baths. The only way for them to get rid of parasites is to wallow in mud baths by digging out the earth. It also allows them to regulate their temperature as they do not sweat. Wild boars are prolific breeders. Each sow will usually produce 1 litter of 4 to 8 piglets per year, and therefore will double her brood on an annual basis. During their first 6 months, wild boar piglets have a striped fur. Each sounder consists of 3 to 4 females and their offspring that are less than a year old. The eldest sow in the sounder is the chief. She is the first in heat, and the rest then follow suit. She decides where the group dwell and which ponds they should and shouldn't drink at. This matriarchal structure is also present in deer herds. Each doe and her fawn from the previous year form a trio, and there are several of these basic family units in each herd. The herd has a leader and a hierarchy that all of the doe conform to. For the first 2 years, the fawns are dependent on their mother to teach them everything, including how to select plants to eat. They then become pre-adolescent. The females are called doe, and the males are called stags. It's the end of May, and the boars begin their spring molt. They start to lose the thick layer of fur that covers them during winter. They then shed their manes and their tails. During the period after the young piglet has shed his striped fur, and before he has become a black beast, he has a reddish-colored fur for around 6 months and is called the red beast. Throughout the spring, the deer have been eating to build their strength and replenish their antlers. By early July, their new antlers have grown and are sheathed in a fine grey velvet-like membrane. The velvet covers the antlers as it grows and provides it with blood and supplies it with oxygen and nutrients. They gradually shed the velvet covering and expose their new antlers. Hierarchies are re-established and they start to prepare for the rutting season. Well, we all go through a gangly stage before we discover our own style. There have been a series of floods and showers between spring and summer. This is nothing to complain about, least of all for the deer, as they require rich vegetation in order to breastfeed their young and to build their strength ahead for rutting season. These are the last showers before the summer heat arrives. The park is luminous and the castle is resplendent. As the heavy heat sets in, the animals start to converge around the ponds, including those who don't usually frequent the water. The atmosphere is tranquil and serene, until the wild boars arrive and things get a little more animated. The young piglets do not yet know how much fun a mud bath can be. They wait calmly with their mother until she has finished washing herself, and they then head back. The time has come. Rutting season has started. The young deer are left feeling strange and exhilarated by the hoarse cries of the large stags. The young stags instinctively know that they shouldn't enter the rutting area as they could be killed. But what do they do with this electricity that is flowing around their bodies? The young stag still has a relatively lean frame, a slender neck and young antlers. In a year or two he will be sexually mature, but he is not yet ready to mate. He will need to wait for another 6 or so years. Meanwhile, he can only observe. The rut begins. An opponent is heard stirring in the bushes. He rubs the soil with his antlers and shows that he is ready to battle. During the 3-week rutting season at Chambord, the foresters observed the deer from dawn to dusk. Last year, they observed 85 males during rutting season. A 12-horned stag has been spotted in this meadow. The foresters sketched the antlers of the large deer. They use these drawings to identify the males because from one year to another, the antler shape doesn't really change. Many of the deer at Chambord have antlers with 12, 14, 16 or more horns. It's a good sign since the size of the antler reflects the health of the deer and the quality of its habitat. The deer were the first inhabitants of the Chambord Kingdom and are the most magical creatures that roam here. Enthusiasts have worked at Chambord during the rutting season for the last 35 years. This extraordinary natural kingdom in the heart of France exists, and that is thanks to the king, who was as much an artist and a dreamer as he was a hunter and a warrior. King François I was an environmentalist ahead of his time. The exquisite Chambord Nature Park serves not only to inspire us today, but will do so for many years to come.